Some stories are designed to give you closure. The monster is defeated, the final girl survives, and the sun rises on a new day. But other stories aren't so kind. They're built to linger, to coil themselves in the back of your mind and just refuse to let go. They give you a puzzle but hide a few of the key pieces, leaving you with a question that has no answer. What if the scariest part of a horror movie isn't the monster you actually see, but the one you don't? What if the real horror is found in the abyss of the unknown, in a mystery that the filmmaker dangles right in front of you only to snatch it away at the last second, leaving you to wonder forever? This isn't just lazy writing or a few plot holes, this is intentional psychological warfare. And tonight we're descending into that abyss. From a silent killer in a sorority house to the shaky fate of humanity itself, we're counting down 20 of the most chilling, unsettling, and deliberately unsolved mysteries in horror. Let's kick things off with a meta-slasher from the late 90s that totally nails the whodunit craze of the time. Is about a group of college students getting picked off one by one, with each murder mimicking a famous urban legend. The whole time, you're trying to figure out who's under that big, heavy parka, swinging that massive axe. And the movie is great at throwing you off the scent. Is it the creepy janitor, the quiet goth girl, the main character's best friend? In the end, we find out it's Brenda, a student getting revenge for her fiancé's death, which was caused by a prank the main characters were all in on. Case closed. Or is it? In the very last scene, everything gets turned on its head. We see one of the survivors, Parker, telling the true story of what happened to a new group of students. Then, a woman in the back, who turns out to be Brenda, very much alive, tells him he's got it all wrong. She leans in and says, "I'll tell you what really happened." That last-second twist makes you question everything. Was Brenda not the only killer, or was the entire story we just watched a lie? An urban legend being born right in front of us. You're left wondering who the true mastermind was, and if the whole bloody cycle is just going to start all over again. This moody British ghost story is a real slow burn, all about grief, skepticism, and the trauma still hanging over everyone after World War I. Florence Cathcart, who makes a living exposing fake spiritualists, is called to a boarding school to investigate the ghost of a murdered boy. The entire movie is soaked in ambiguity, but the biggest mystery is saved for the end, and it's all about Florence herself. After a bunch of supernatural scares and a huge revelation about her own connection to the school, Florence tries to save the disturbed groundskeeper. In the chaos, it looks like they both die from gas inhalation. The next thing we see is Florence standing with the ghosts of the house, looking peaceful, like she's finally one of them. But then, the movie gives us one last shot. Florence is seemingly alive and well, back in London, with her love interest, Robert. The film deliberately gives us two opposite endings. So what's the truth? Is she alive, and her ghostly reunion was just a near-death hallucination? Or did she actually die, and her life with Robert is just a projection of her own personal heaven? The movie never says, leaving her stuck somewhere between the living world she fought for and the spirit world she tried so hard to debunk. Michael Dougherty's Krampus is a twisted Christmas horror that dives into what happens when a family's holiday spirit just completely dies. When a young boy, Max, tears up his letter to Santa out of frustration, he accidentally summons the anti-Santa Krampus. What comes next is a full-on siege as Krampus and his army of demonic toys tear the dysfunctional family apart. In the climax, Krampus drags the entire family down into a fiery pit. But then, Max wakes up. It's Christmas morning, his family is alive, happy, and opening presents. It all seems like it was just a horrible nightmare, a scary lesson to appreciate what he has. But then Max opens his last gift and finds a Krampus bell, a souvenir from his dream. As the family looks at it, they all remember. So what does that ending really mean? Are they literally trapped in that snow globe for eternity, with Krampus watching over them? Or was the snow globe just a final chilling reminder from the Christmas demon, a warning that he's always watching to make sure they never lose their holiday spirit again? The movie leaves it totally open, turning what could have been a happy ending into a seriously unsettling question. You can't talk about iconic killer objects without talking about Christine, the 1958 Plymouth Fury from John Carpenter's adaptation of the Stephen King novel. The car is jealous, possessive, and brutally protective of its nerdy owner, Arnie Cunningham. It can magically repair itself, hunt down anyone who crosses it, and is basically just a four-wheeled engine of pure evil. But why? That's the one question the film never really answers. Just like the book, the movie drops hints but never gives a solid explanation for where Christine's evil comes from. Is the car possessed by the spirit of its violent former owner? Was it just built wrong, rolling off the assembly line with malice already baked into its chassis? Or is it something older and more demonic that just decided to use a classic car as its body? The movie never clarifies. That very first scene on the assembly line, where it injures one worker and kills another, suggests the evil is just part of the car itself. But the way it corrupts Arnie feels more like a possession. The true source of Christine's rage is a complete mystery, which honestly makes it even scarier. It's not just a haunted car, it's a killer car with no clear origin, a symbol of pure, unexplainable evil hiding in plain sight. Ari Aster's folk horror nightmare Midsummer drops its characters, and, us, into the bright, sunny, and deeply disturbing world of the Harga, a remote Swedish commune. The movie explains a lot of their shocking and violent rituals as part of a 90-year cycle, but the full picture of what they believe and what they're truly trying to achieve remains a mystery. We get the basic idea of the festival. They need ritual sacrifices to cleanse the community, and they need to bring in new people for, breeding, but the deeper reasons are kept just out of reach. What's the deal with their oracle, Reuben, the inbred boy whose drawings seem to map out their future? How far does their influence stretch into the outside world? Pell mentions casually that he's brought other friends to the commune before, which implies these sacrificial festivals are a regular thing. The film shows us their traditions almost like a documentary, but it never really explains their core beliefs. We know their actions are for balance and rebirth, but the meaning of their runes, the details of their sacred texts, and their ultimate long-term goals are all a mystery. Are they just a cult trying to survive, or are they working towards something much bigger and more sinister? We leave the movie as outsiders, having seen the horror up close but never fully understanding the terrifying world they've built. Jennifer Kent's works on two terrifying levels at once, and honestly, the biggest mystery is trying to figure out which one is real. The story is about Amelia, a grieving widow, and her very troubled son, Samuel. Samuel becomes convinced that a creepy monster from a storybook, Mr. Babadook, is stalking them. On one hand, you can watch this as a straight-up supernatural horror film. A real demon, accidentally summoned from a cursed book, invades their home and feeds on Amelia's grief. There's plenty of evidence for this. Doors opening on their own, strange sounds, and the Babadook even getting physical. But the film is also widely seen as a powerful metaphor for crippling depression and unresolved trauma. In this reading, the Babadook isn't a literal monster, but a physical manifestation of Amelia's inner demons. The end, where Amelia doesn't kill the Babadook but instead traps it in the basement and feeds it, really supports this idea. You can't just destroy grief or mental illness, you have to learn to manage it, to live with it. The film brilliantly refuses to pick a side, leaving it up to you to decide if Amelia battled a literal demon or just finally confronted her own. Was the surprise horror flick of 2022, a movie that, honestly, loves pulling the rug out from under you more than once. It starts with a simple premise. A woman's Airbnb is accidentally double-booked with a guy who seems nice but a little weird, and quickly spirals into a nightmare of hidden tunnels and a monstrous woman known only as the Mother. Through some truly horrifying flashbacks, we learn about the house's history. The original owner, Frank, was a predator who kidnapped women and kept them in the basement for decades. The Mother is the product of his crimes, a woman who has known nothing but abuse and darkness, and now acts out a twisted, violent version of motherhood on anyone who ends up in her tunnels. But that's where the hard facts stop. The movie leaves so much about the Mother's history in the dark. Who was she before Frank took her? How many generations of this abuse have there been under that house? Is she Frank's only surviving victim, or is she the daughter, or even granddaughter, of the first woman he took? We see these little flashes of her humanity, but her full story, her name, and the timeline of the decades of horror that created her are left a mystery. She's a monster born from trauma, but the film is smart enough to let our own imaginations fill in the most horrifying details. Freddy Krueger is like a horror legend. He's a child murderer who was burned to death by angry parents, only to come back to haunt their kids in their dreams. The rules in the dream world seem simple enough. If he gets you in your sleep, you die for real. But the movie's biggest mystery is how and when Freddy can break those rules and mess with the real world. Throughout the film, the line between dreams and reality gets incredibly blurry. Take Tina's death. She's sliced up and dragged across the ceiling of her bedroom while her boyfriend watches it happen in the real world, totally helpless. How does Freddy do that? Later, Nancy actually pulls Freddy's hat out of her dream and into her bedroom, proving that things can cross over. This is what gives her the idea to pull him out completely and fight him in the real world where he should be just a normal guy, and it seems like she does it. She sets him on fire and he seems to be gone for good, but that infamous final scene rips that victory away. Nancy gets into a car with her friends, all of whom were killed earlier, and suddenly the car's convertible top, striped just like Freddy's sweater, slams shut and traps them. Then Freddy's gloved hand smashes through the front door window and pulls Nancy's mom inside. Was that whole final fight just another dream? Can Freddy actually control reality itself? The film never gives his powers any clear limits, leaving you with the terrifying thought that there's no escape from him, whether you're awake or asleep. Alejandro Amenabar's Gothic masterpiece, The Others, is built around one of the most brilliant plot twists in all of horror. The film follows Grace Stewart, who lives in a huge, fog-covered mansion with her 2 children, who are allergic to sunlight. She is absolutely convinced that their house is being haunted by ghostly intruders she calls the Others. The whole movie, you're trying to figure out who these others are. We hear footsteps, a piano plays by itself, and Grace's daughter keeps saying she sees them. The tension just keeps building until the shocking climax, when Grace finds the Others holding a seance. It's then that she realizes the truth. The Others are the new, living family that just moved in. Grace and her children are the ghosts, but solving that mystery just opens up another one. We learn that Grace, overwhelmed with grief after finding out her husband died in the war, smothered her children and then killed herself. But the movie is pretty vague about the rules of their existence as ghosts. Are they trapped there because of the trauma of how they died? Is the house some kind of purgatory? The servants, who are also ghosts, seem to know more about what's going on, but they never spell it out. The film ends with Grace and her children deciding to stay, declaring this house is ours, but the rules that govern their afterlife, and whether they can ever find peace, remain a hauntingly unanswered question. One of the oldest tricks in horror is to never actually show the monster, and Bird Box took that idea and ran with it. The film is set in a post-apocalyptic world where society has completely fallen apart because of these mysterious, invisible creatures. If you look at one, you're driven to instant, violent suicide. The only way to survive is to never ever open your eyes. This premise creates the movie's biggest and most debated mystery. What in the world are the creatures? The film gives us 0 answers. We have no idea where they came from. Are they aliens, demons, or something from another dimension? We never see what they look like, although the creepy drawings from the people who've seen them and survived suggest something with tentacles. We don't even know what they want. Are they trying to be evil, or is the suicidal effect just a weird, accidental byproduct of them existing? Kind of like how a human might look at a germ. The movie's power comes from that total ambiguity. By refusing to show or explain the threat, it forces your own imagination to fill in the blanks, making the monster a personal nightmare for every single person watching. People have guessed everything from angels and demons to some kind of quantum anomaly. But the movie never confirms a thing. The real horror of Bird Box is not knowing what's out there, which is a perfect metaphor for a fear you can't see, can't name, and can't possibly understand. Before we crack into our top 10, let's talk theories. The best part about these mysteries is that they're practically begging for speculation. What's your take on the creatures from Bird Box? or the snow globe at the end of Krampus? Drop your favorite theory in the comments below. And if you're digging this descent into the unknown, do me a favor and hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss what's coming next. Alright, let's continue the countdown. Ari Aster's first film, Hereditary, is just a relentless spiral into grief, trauma, and a seriously creepy supernatural plot. The Graham family starts to completely unravel after their secretive grandmother dies, which kicks off a chain of horrifying events that ends with the summoning of a demon king named Paimon. The end of the movie confirms that the supernatural stuff is real. There's a cult that's been worshipping Paimon and manipulating the family for generations, all to give the demon a new male body. But the film is so brilliant because it blurs the line between the cult's actions and the family's very real psychological breakdown. The biggest mystery is trying to figure out how much of the horror was the demon Paimon pulling the strings, and how much was just inherited mental illness that the cult was using to their advantage. Annie's sleepwalking, her messed up relationship with her mom, her fits of hysteria. You could argue all of that is just a result of extreme psychological distress, with or without a demon. The cult is clearly taking advantage of her, but are they making everything happen, or just capitalizing on a family that was already falling apart? For example, did Paimon cause the car accident that killed Charlie, or was that a horrible tragedy that the cult was just smart enough to use in their plan? The movie gives you evidence for both sides, creating this terrifying loop where you can't tell where the family's madness ends and the demon's plan begins. Sinister gave us one of the scariest modern horror villains, an ancient Babylonian god called Bughul, or Mr. Boogie. This eater of children has a very specific and chilling way of doing things. He corrupts a child in a family, makes them murder their own relatives, and has them film the whole thing. Those home movies then become portals for him to move into our world. The movie gives us those basic rules, but the deeper mythology of Bughul is left intentionally mysterious. A professor in the film mentions he's an obscure deity who needs to consume children's souls to live. Some extra materials released for the film suggest he's the brother of Moloch, another child-sacrificing god, and that Moloch sealed Bughul's mouth with ash as punishment. But none of that is actually in the movie itself, so we're left with a ton of questions. What are the limits of his power? Can he only travel through images of himself, or are there other ways? And what happens to the souls of the children he takes? We see them as little ghosts who help him corrupt the next kid, but are they doing it willingly, or are they just his puppets? The movie creates an absolutely terrifying monster but is smart enough to keep his full backstory and powers in the dark, making him this primal, unknowable evil. David Robert Mitchell's It Follows is built on such a simple and terrifying idea. There's a supernatural curse passed on through sex that makes a shape-shifting creature slowly but constantly walk towards you. If it touches you, you die. The only way to save yourself is to pass it on to someone else. The movie gives absolutely no explanation for what this creature is or where it came from. Is it a ghost? A demon? Some kind of spirit of revenge? Why is it connected to sex? People have debated if it's a metaphor for STDs, the loss of innocence, or just the creeping anxiety of getting older. The director has said the idea came from a recurring nightmare, and that the movie is supposed to run on dream logic, so it's not meant to be easily explained. The entity's rules also seem a bit inconsistent. It usually walks, but sometimes it seems to just appear out of thin air. It can look like a total stranger or someone you love, seemingly just to mess with you and make you paranoid. We don't know what it wants besides killing its target, and we definitely don't know its origin. The mystery is the whole point. The entity is a stand-in for any kind of dread that you can't escape, whether it's death, responsibility, or trauma, that just keeps following you no matter what. The fact that it has no identity is exactly what makes it so terrifying. The American remake of the Japanese classic Ringu scared everyone with its simple, deadly premise. Watch a cursed videotape, get a phone call, and die in 7 days. The main character, Rachel, figures out that the tape is connected to the tragic story of a little girl named Samara who was thrown down a well by her mother and left to die. So Rachel, thinking like a logical person, assumes that what Samara wants is for someone to find her body and tell her story. She finds the well, recovers Samara's remains, and gives her a proper burial. She survives past the 7-day mark. It looks like she broke the curse. But then her son Aiden gives her the chilling warning. You weren't supposed to help her. He explains that Samara never sleeps. The curse isn't broken at all. Samara's ghost climbs out of a TV and kills Rachel's ex-boyfriend. It's then that Rachel realizes she was only spared because she made a copy of the tape, which her son then watched, passing the curse along. This leads to the terrifying mystery. What does Samara actually want? If it's not peace or justice, what's her goal? The horrifying answer seems to be that she is just pure, undiluted evil. She doesn't want to be saved. She just wants her suffering to spread like a virus in an endless chain of death and pain. Trying to help her only made things worse. Mary Harron's incredible satire of 80s yuppie culture American Psycho is told completely through the eyes of Patrick Bateman. He's a rich, handsome, and perfectly groomed investment banker who is also, maybe, a completely depraved serial killer. We watch him spiral into crazier and crazier acts of violence, from brutal murders to a car chase that ends with him blowing up a police car with a handgun. The central mystery, the one that people have been arguing about for decades, is whether any of it was real. The movie is full of clues that it might all just be in his head. His rambling, detailed confession to his lawyer is mistaken for a prank. He goes back to an apartment where he knows he killed multiple people, only to find it perfectly clean and staged for sale by a real estate agent who tells him to get lost. And nobody ever seems to notice that any of his victims, including his co-worker Paul Allen, are missing. So, is Bateman just an unreliable narrator, hallucinating all of his crimes to cope with how empty and shallow his life is? Or is he a real killer, living in a world so obsessed with status and appearances that nobody even notices or cares about his crimes? The film gives you no easy answers because the ambiguity is the whole point. It's a savage critique of a society where what you own is more important than who you are, so much so that even a confession to mass murder can just be ignored. Whether it was real or not, the horror of Patrick Bateman is that he exists in a world that lets him get away with it. Alfred Hitchcock's masterpiece of eco-horror The Birds gives us a terrifyingly simple scenario. For no reason at all, birds of all kinds suddenly start attacking people in violent, organized swarms. The film follows a socialite named Melanie Daniels, who gets trapped in the small coastal town of Bodega Bay, as it becomes ground zero for the bird apocalypse. The single biggest mystery in the movie, and one of the most famous in all of cinema, is simply, why? Hitchcock gives us absolutely no explanation. There's no scientific reason given, no supernatural event, and no single act of cruelty that triggers the attacks. They just start happening. The characters in the movie have their own theories. Is it the end of the world? Did Melanie somehow bring this curse to the town? One woman in a diner completely loses it and screams at her, "I think you're the cause of all this, I think you're evil." But these are just the desperate guesses of people trying to find a reason for something so senseless. Hitchcock's choice to not give an answer was a stroke of genius. The film becomes a primal story about how helpless we really are against the power of nature. The lack of a motive makes the horror feel existential. There's no one to blame and nothing to fix. There is only the terrifying, unexplainable fact that the world has simply turned against us. So, the Blair Witch Project completely changed the game for horror with its found footage style, convincing tons of people they were actually watching a real documentary about 3 student filmmakers who disappeared in the woods. The movie's power is all about what it doesn't show you, building this unbearable dread that all leads to one of the most debated endings in horror history. After days of being lost and tormented by something they can't see, Heather and Mike stumble upon an old abandoned house in the middle of the woods, a house that shouldn't be there. They hear what sounds like their missing friend Josh screaming from inside, so they run in. They get separated, and Mike's camera shows him going down into the basement before something attacks him, and the camera drops. Heather follows, and her camera catches the absolutely terrifying sight of Mike standing silently in the corner, facing the wall. Then she screams, her camera falls, and the film just cuts to black. The mystery is twofold. What attacked them, and what does Mike standing in the corner mean? The film's backstory, which we heard earlier, told the story of a killer named Rustin Parr, who said the Blair Witch made him kill kids in pairs. He'd make one kid face the corner while he killed the other one. This totally implies that the witch was forcing them to relive that moment. But yeah, we never see her. Was it really the witch? Was it the ghost of Rustin Parr? Or was it Josh, driven insane and possessed by whatever evil was in those woods? The ending gives us nothing, leaving us staring into the same terrifying darkness that swallowed the filmmakers. Stanley Kubrick's version of The Shining is a maze of psychological and supernatural horror, packed with ambiguous moments. But there's one scene that stands out as the most blatant and baffling supernatural event in the whole movie. The moment Jack Torrance is freed from the pantry. After Jack completely loses his mind, Wendy manages to hit him over the head and lock him in the storeroom. It's a heavy door, bolted from the outside. There's no way out. While Jack is raging inside, he has a conversation through the door with a voice he calls Grady, the ghost of the guy who was the caretaker before him. Jack promises that he'll correct his wife and son if Grady just lets him out. We hear a voice on the other side say, "You've had your whole life to think about it, but I'll give you one more chance." Then you hear the clear, unmistakable sound of the outside bolt sliding open. The door is unlocked. Jack is free. So, who opened it? The simplest answer is that the ghost of Delbert Grady did, making it the one moment in the film that can't be explained away as a hallucination. But this is a Kubrick film, and it's never that simple. Some people theorize that Danny used his powers to unlock the door in a trance. Others think Jack somehow managed to do it himself in his rage, but the way the film presents it, it's a ghost. It's the moment the hotel itself physically steps in to unleash its monster, a chilling mystery that confirms the forces at play in the Overlook are very, very real. Long before Michael Myers or Jason Voorhees, there was Billy. The original Black Christmas is pretty much the grandfather of all slasher movies, and its killer is one of the most terrifying in horror history, simply because we know almost nothing about him. The movie is about a sorority house where the residents are stalked and killed during Christmas break. The killer torments them with these obscene, unhinged phone calls, speaking in multiple crazy voices and talking about Billy and Agnes. The police trace the calls and make the horrifying discovery: they're coming from inside the house. The killer has been up in the attic the whole time, but we never ever find out who he is. We call him Billy because of the phone calls, but his face, his reasons, his entire backstory, all of it is a complete mystery. Is he a former resident? Is he connected to the girls somehow? The film gives us almost no clues. The director, Bob Clark, later said he did have a backstory in mind, but he wisely decided to leave it out of the film. And that choice is what makes the movie so effective. Billy isn't some tragic character. He's the embodiment of random, senseless violence. He's the ultimate boogeyman, a terrifying phantom with no face and no motive, who could be anyone, anywhere. And here we are at number 1, the undisputed king of ambiguous horror endings. John Carpenter's The Thing is a masterpiece of paranoia and dread. It's about a group of researchers in Antarctica who are hunted by a shape-shifting alien that can perfectly copy any living thing it absorbs. The movie's tension comes from the fact that literally anyone could be the creature, and by the end, only 2 men are left: the helicopter pilot, MacReady, and the mechanic, Childs. The research station is destroyed, the temperature is plummeting, and both of them are freezing to death. They sit down across from each other, sharing a bottle of scotch, neither one knowing if the other is human. MacReady looks at him and says, "Why don't we just wait here for a little while, see what happens?" The film ends right there, on their faces, leaving audiences with the most agonizing, unresolved question in horror history. Who is the Thing? Every single frame of this final scene has been torn apart and analyzed for decades. Is Childs the Thing because you can't see his breath in the cold air? That's actually a myth. You can see it if you look closely. Is MacReady the Thing, offering a drink that might not be scotch? Could it be both of them just putting on a show for no one? Or are they both human, simply doomed to freeze to death, having actually defeated the alien? Carpenter has always refused to give a real answer because the whole point is the complete breakdown of trust. The film isn't about who wins or loses, it's about the pure horror of not knowing who to trust. It is a perfect, chilling ending that leaves the fate of the entire world hanging on a question that will, and should, remain forever unsolved. The credits roll, the lights come up, but for movies like these, the story is never really over. That's the genius of it. They don't just scare you for a couple of hours. They plant a seed of doubt, a little question that sticks with you long after you've gone home. The unknown is a canvas and our fears are the paint. By leaving these mysteries unsolved, these filmmakers are inviting us to create our own nightmares. And really, isn't that the scariest thing of all? What did you think of our list? Is there a haunting movie mystery that we missed? Let us know in the comments. Thanks for watching, and whatever you do, don't turn out the lights.